We've got a big update on Matthew Stafford's future with the Rams and our big takeaways from the 2024 season. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, subscribe to the fastest growing Rams YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, and let us know down below. Do you want to see Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp back? Do you want to see just Stafford, not Kupp? Let us know down below. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I'm covering LA sports for over a decade. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just finished his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, Matthew Stafford is reportedly coming back, but will it be with the Rams? And do they need to get a new deal done? Cooper Kupp, what's the story with him? And also, we've got our big takeaways from the Rams 2024 season. That's coming up. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Travis, we're going to get right down to business because it's not a big surprise or anything like that, but Rappaport is reporting that Matthew Stafford does want to play next season. He already said after the Rams lost in the playoffs that he does feel like he has more left in the tank and more football left in him. And what Rappaport said was he's due $27 million next year, not guaranteed on his contract, and I have a hard time imagining Matthew Stafford playing for that. Last year before training camp, also right before the buzzer, I believe it ended up being a 1-year, $40 million deal. I would imagine they'll have to look at his contract again. So basically, Stafford has 2 years left on his contract. He has a $4 million bonus that's due on the third day of the new league year in March. So the Rams, if they do want to get a new deal done before that, it's really difficult to see the two sides not figuring something out. I think it's a formality at this point. The Rams could technically move off of it. Matthew Stafford could technically be on a new team, but it seems like it makes too much sense for these two to reunite and continue together.
Yeah, I think it's a little different than maybe it was a year ago when you and I were talking about this. And I think I said something along the lines of I was kind of just sliding it off the table and said, I'm not worried about this. Matthew Stafford will be the quarterback of the Rams for the 2024 season. They will figure it out. I wasn't worried about the timeline. I wasn't worried about feelings. I wasn't worried about anything other than how well is he going to play, right? That was it. There really wasn't a ton of concern as far as I was thinking about it or whether or not it would get done. That was last year. I don't know if I feel like that this year. I think it's likely to get done. I think it's more likely than not. I think if you forced me to bet an amount of money that I was uncomfortable betting and said, is he back or not, I would put it on the he's back. But I don't think it's a slam dunk no matter what he's back. I think it's more of a likelihood, a weighted coin flip, because he does have a contract situation that is not, favorable to the team, that is not favorable to what they want to do moving forward. He is going to be 37 years old. He is going to be in his 17th season. These are real concerns. Now, he also can look at them and say, you don't have a better option. I'm still playing at a high level. And both of those things are very true. So I think they need to come to some sort of agreement sooner than later. I think the most interesting thing that I've heard, at least, is what Sean McVay said, where we're going to get this done as quickly as possible. Like they're going to have a resolution on this sooner than later. I think what makes me feel relatively good about this is it's in everybody's best interest for him to be back. There really isn't another team for him to go to that is going to be closer to winning a title, or at least giving him a chance to win a title, that is available and open that is better than the Rams. The Rams do not have a better option at quarterback than Matthew Stafford. We saw what it looked like there just a couple of weeks ago. The Rams are pretty darn close. They've got a defense that's closing in maybe on a championship level defense. They still have a high level quarterback. So I think it's in everybody's best interest, but money complicates everything. He wants a lot. The Rams want to pay a little bit less. They want some, I'm sure there's some terms and some parameters that they need to change a little bit. The money needs to probably come back a little bit, but I think he's likely to be here, but I would not bet my house on it this year. Last year, I was convinced he was coming back. Not so much this year.
I'm pretty confident that it's near a lock just because of how well they've drafted and the pieces that they have in place. I think had they whipped on a lot of those picks and it looked like it was more of a messy down to the studs level rebuild, I think I'd be more comfortable saying, okay, well, we got to find the quarterback. It starts with a quarterback, and you kind of go that route. But with the lack of options on the free agent market that makes sense, with the draft where they're at, I mean, I would be interested in seeing them pick up Jackson Dart for a couple of years and have him be behind Matthew Stafford and see how that goes. I'm really intrigued by that as a possibility. But I think just the fact that you are a cornerback, a linebacker, another playmaker away from really being right back in that Super Bowl mix, Matthew Stafford, you look how he performed when this team was healthy. There's no doubt about it in my mind that he could still get this team to the promised land and they can hoist another Lombardi trophy with them. I know that 37, 38 for a lot of positions, you're done. But at the quarterback position now in the NFL, you can still have some productive years with that. And really the sticking point is the lack of guaranteed money. I mean, 2 years of his 4-year deal left that he signed in 2022, you restructured that deal. And by doing that, you gave up that guaranteed money for essentially what was a 1-year, $40 million deal. So the Rams do have leverage in this.
Yes, they do.
Kind of, but they also have to know that Stafford realizes his value as well, is that the quarterbacks like him just don't grow on trees. You don't find them very often. And the truth is, if the Rams did want to go in a different direction, Stafford has a $49.6 million cap number heading into the 2025 season. The Rams could save $27 million if they did trade him post June 1st and $23 million as a post June 1st cut, but that would involve them having to go get another quarterback. And for that kind of money, it just doesn't make sense. So that's where I think that both sides have a little bit of a leverage from that standpoint. Yes, the Rams could save money, but with that money saved, where do you go from a quarterback? And hey, I think the fact that if the idea of Stetson Bennett being under center for you doesn't scare you enough to get a deal done, I don't know what else will.
Yeah, no, that's certainly not the answer. I think you're right. I think it's mutually beneficial to both sides for them both to continue this relationship. I think the Rams have done a great job of understanding that when they are in their window, you shoot your shot, that you give it a chance. The window is open. And it's open with Matthew Stafford. Is it open with Sam Darnold? Maybe, probably not. Is it open with Kirk Cousins? No. Like, these are the sort of guys, or you got to really back it up to a youngster, and we all know what that typically looks like. So I'm optimistic that it gets done because I think this is the best place for him. He's the best player for them. So I'm hopeful, but man, money makes stuff complicated very, very quickly.
Yeah, and Stafford's happy in LA. Him and McVay have a great relationship. I think it'd be a catastrophic move not to find a way to retain him and keep him in LA and try to find something longer term. I think you look around the league, teams that have lost quarterbacks, teams that think they can find that next guy. Don't go that route until you actually have to. I think that's where I'm going with this. But coming up next, we're talking Super Bowl 34, the 25th anniversary of the Rams' first Super Bowl win, and also our big takeaways from the 2024 season. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching, listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Cannot thank you enough. And you got to stay locked on all off season. Lots of moves, championships. They are made in the off season. So stay locked on and continue this journey of Rams football with us all off season. Okay, Travis, before we get to our big takeaways, just want to say happy 25th anniversary to the 2000 Rams that brought home that first Super Bowl championship. The most iconic plays in Super Bowl history. Mike Jones tackling Kevin Dyson there at the 1 yard line. One of the best tackles in the history of the sport. I'll never forget it. But what are your memories from that first Super Bowl championship with the Rams?
Yeah, it's funny. I got a chance to meet Mike Jones a couple of weeks ago. He came in and did the radio show that I do with a member of that championship team, DeMarco Farr. They were obviously members of that championship winning defense together. And I got to hear Mike tell the story all over again. And it's funny, from a fan's, I remember where I lived. I remember who I was watching the game with and everything else. And when Dyson caught the ball, you thought, oh my God, is he going to go in? And he's getting closer and closer. And then Jones makes the tackle on about the 1.5 yard line, just short of the Titans winning the game. And, so you're kind of hanging on every single second of it. And you heard Mike Jones tell it to me a couple of weeks ago. And it was, I had him the whole way. Like I knew exactly where he was coming from. I knew exactly where I had the help. And this was a tackle that I was going to make. And it was oddly reassuring, even 25 years after the fact, to know that it really wasn't in jeopardy the way that it might have looked like in the moment, that he knew he was going to make that play. Terrific guy, great championship. And my only, just my only little is St. Louis, bro. Like it's just not the same. I'm sorry. Sorry. It's just not. It didn't happen here. It happened in St. Louis, and I'm sure St. Louis loves it, and I'm sure that the championship in Super Bowl 56 a couple of years ago does not fill them with the warm fuzzies, but it was a great play. It was a great moment, but I can't help but think it happened in St. Louis and not L.A.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my Rams fandom was negative years old at that point, for sure. My love for the Rams came from Madden and Marshall Faulk, and kind of when they had the jersey changeover and when they kind of went to the darker colors. But still, I mean, like you said, I mean that was a dramatic game because, man, if you're a young football fan or you love Steve McNair and Eddie George in that Titans team. But what was cool too is that Super Bowl. You looked at the final four teams: the Jaguars, Titans, the Rams, and the Buccaneers. All four had never won a Super Bowl. So, I mean, it was the last time you had all four that had won in that round, and the Rams go on to win it. But, yeah, I mean, you give goosebumps watching it now for sure.
Yeah, you brought it up, too, and I'm glad you did, that you go back and you watch the highlights, and I am old enough to have watched that game. I was married when that game took place. So this is it's something that I'm very Steve McNair and Eddie George were unbelievable NFL football players, and that the Rams, who were the greatest show on turf and scoring 1 million points a game and all that they won that game with their defense is pretty remarkable, because this was a team, obviously, you go back to the NFC Championship game where they beat Tampa, some weird, like 13-9 or some bizarre score like that. It was a weird moment, but they got that first one. It's like anything else. Once you kind of climb that mountain, it gets a little bit easier to do it again, knowing that it can happen. And that was the first. It was great. But George and McNair were just extra and terrifying to watch.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Like, I mean, the cool thing about it too is Mike Jones wasn't someone that was a Hall of Famer or perennial Pro Bowl. His career's after a couple years after that, and he ends up making one of the most iconic plays. And it kind of goes. It's to me, it's almost like David, Tyree's catch and Holmes' catch and Vinatieri's kick. It's like really on that short list of extremely iconic plays. But what I love about it, it's a defensive play that really sets it apart.
Well, yeah, you're right. A defensive play that set it apart, and that's what makes the NFL, and that's what makes the Super Bowl. Sometimes you get a blowout in the Super Bowl, and whatever, it's not a great game, but you get a really good mix of, oh my God, Tom Brady did this, or oh my God, that Patrick Mahomes did that. And then you get games like Mike Jones or Larry Brown, or guys that weren't necessarily stars of the moment, but made the play that defined the game. And that's just awesome. I mean, I'm sure we'll see it, many, many more times where the game this weekend, maybe it's not Saquon Barkley or Patrick Mahomes, but rather a player a little bit further down the depth chart that we remember and we're talking about in the year 2050.
And the sad part about it is Jeff Fisher had to get his revenge from the inside after years and years of ruining this franchise. So fortunately, it came back to haunt him a little bit. But yeah, just awesome. So Rams fans, go watch that tonight. You can actually watch the full thing on YouTube, so for free. So definitely go watch it tonight. It's definitely good times. I think I'm gonna do that tonight for sure. But our big takeaways from the 2024 season, the first one is going to be kind of somewhat of a negative one, and that is that the free agent signings were busts. Most of them flopped. Most of them did not work out. Colby Parkinson, Jonah Jackson, Cameron Curl, Darius Williams, Tre'Davious White, a mix of pros and cons in those. Of Darius Williams, Cameron Curl had their moments, but I mean, guys like Jonah Jackson, their big offseason pickup. I mean, he got replaced by a 6th-round pick in Bo Limmer, and he really didn't have the impact that they were hoping. He had the injury, and then just wasn't that guy that was brought in to help solidify this offensive line. Tre'Davious White, he was on another team, of course, through the season. He wasn't someone that looked anything like the all-pro player that he was early in his career coming off the injuries. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Parkinson, $22 million deal. He didn't meet expectations at tight end. So, yeah, I think that's kind of one of the big things that you can take from last offseason to this one is with the draft picks hitting, with the young players emerging, if you do hit on the free agents, then you could really take this team over the top.
Yeah, I think, when at least how I look at it, D-Mac, is you need to get more right than you get wrong. You're not going to get them all right. And is the team in a better spot than it was at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year than it was at the beginning of the year? Yeah, you're right. All the guys that you mentioned, in particular, White and Jonah Jackson, just really did not have an impact in any meaningful way. Parkinson is one of those guys too. And they missed. It didn't work. It's really hard to spin it any other way. It just didn't pay dividends the way that you were hoping to. Now, I think the silver lining of that is they killed it in the draft. They absolutely destroyed the draft. So, they weren't relying exclusively on free agents to fill some of the holes that they had during last offseason. And number two, and I've said this before, the everydayers have heard me say this, and I think it's one of the Rams' great attributes as an organization. They realize when they got it wrong and they move on. They don't just keep trying to make the thing that didn't work. They didn't try to make Jonah Jackson work after they realized it just really didn't work. Like you said it. Okay, Bo Limmer, you're in, you're next. And a lot of teams like, no, we're paying him. He's got to play. The Rams don't really do that. That Tre'Davious White was kind of a reclamation project that they were unable to reclaim. And they said, thank you for your service, but we can't use you anymore. And they move on. I give them all the credit in the world for that, because I don't think it's all that common to just self-evaluate effectively and say, we missed it. Let's move on to the next one. I'm sure that in this next cycle, there will be a draft pick or so that gets missed. Maybe a free agent gets missed. But as long as you're getting more right than wrong, and they certainly got more right than wrong, I think they're always going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Williams and Curl definitely worked out. I think you could definitely safely say that, but that's a fantastic point. A lot of organizations out there would be sunk cost fallacy level with guys like Jonah Jackson, even going back to Joe Noteboom and Alec Jackson. Jackson, they believe in him, and he certainly made himself money this offseason as well. So there's no doubt about that they're not afraid to move off of guys. Just because they paid you does not mean they're going to play you with this organization. You're going to have to earn it. Everything is earned with the Rams. Now, coming up next, though, a major positive takeaway that could set this Rams team up for success for years to come. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
Who doesn't love going to a playoff game, right? Who doesn't love going to a basketball game, a hockey game? It's just, there's just something about being in the building, right? And now we're talking about Gametime. I love going to games, but sometimes I don't really think it through way ahead of time, and I got to get it done at the last minute. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. And it filters out the fluff to only show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time, on your phone, flip, looking through thousands of tickets, right? And there's just so many different things you can do on Gametime. Here in LA, you can go to the Kings, you can go to the Ducks, there's MLS, there's of course baseball right around the corner, there's all sorts of football, and we got basketball, 2 NBA teams. A super deal, especially incredibly fun to go and sit there right on the front row. You want to go up to the top, you can do whatever you want with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Gametime. Download the app, the Gametime app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, so a very positive takeaway here is the Rams absolutely crushed it again with their draft class. And this is consecutive draft classes where they absolutely went above and beyond with high picks that worked out and picks in the later rounds that worked out. And the first one you have to talk about is Jared Verse. He was a guy that really kind of fell into their lap there at 19. If you want to be drafted by the Rams in the first round, your name better be Jared. And he's someone that's going to likely win the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. He was the PFWA All-Rookie selection and just an absolute beastly year. And I think that the cool thing about Jared Verse is he had a great season, but he's going to get a lot better because the pressure was right there towards the top of the league, not even just for rookies, for all players, but it was just tackling early on and just finishing the job. And he's going to improve in that category in this offseason. So I'm very excited about his future. He looks not like an all-pro, a Pro Bowl, he looks like an all-pro, which is a big difference. And very excited about his future.
I don't have a ton to add to that, Doug. I agree with everything you said. Yeah. He's special, and not just he's not a good player. He might be a great player. Like he will be an all-pro. I'd be surprised if he's not. And I think the greatest compliment you can pay him and pay the Rams simultaneously is if you redrafted, you don't have a prayer of getting him. He's one of the first handful of guys off the board. And if you said to the Rams, you could move up 10 spots, who do you want? They'd take the same guy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's just, they got their guy where they got him. You and I were talking about Latu. We were talking about Brock Bowers and all these guys that maybe they could move up to get and move around a little bit. They got exactly the right player and a guy that, I hope is here for a very long time. To your point, I think he's going to continue to get better. He seems to love playing. He's got personality. He's got charisma. He talks, like he's just exactly what you would hope to get in a first rounder. And they A triple plus on Jared Verse.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, he's someone that is going to get better. And also, you look at kind of what he brings to the table as a leader too. One thing I loved about Jared Verse, and I'm watching the NBA, right? Nothing's really going on right now. So I'm watching the NBA and I'm like, doesn't have the juice right now, right? No. And you got a guy like Jared Verse who said, I hate Philly fans. Find me one NBA player that's saying I hate Heat fans. I hate, he brings that next level kind of charisma and kind of juice to the position I really like. But 77 pressures, that was the fourth most in the NFL, 4.5 sacks. And the reason for that, you had 21 missed tackles. So you're generating pressure at an elite clip. Now I just got to finish the job. So he's going to win AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I think too, towards the end of his rookie season, he felt like it was a freshman elite 5-star recruit that by the end of that year, by the bowl game, he was really like an elite sophomore, right?
Yeah.
Against the Vikings, against the Eagles, he had 12 total pressures. He had 2 sacks against both of them. He was absolutely dominant.
I'm never, obviously it's a different position, first of all, but I think he stepped into that Aaron Donald role about as best as you can. And I'm never going to make the mistake of comparing anybody to Aaron Donald, who might be the greatest defensive player ever, and certainly on the very short list of greatest Rams defensive players ever. However, he does the thing that Aaron Donald did, which is because he's so good everyone else has to pay attention to him, and that gives opportunities to other people. And I'm not taking anything away from Kobe Turner or Byron Young or Michael Hoyt or Braden Fisk or any of these guys. But Verse is so good and creates so many problems for the opposition that opportunities fall into other guys' laps, and you got to see it. Neville Gallimore's getting to the quarterback. There's more and more guys who are able to do what they do, because where's number 8? We got to deal with him first. It's not unlike with Aaron Donald. It's like, where's 99? Okay, let's double him, triple him. I mean, those memes are classic where there's 4 guys blocking him. I don't know if Verse is at that point yet, but he was certainly drawing a ton of attention, and that benefited his teammates.
Yeah, and his Florida State teammate Braden Fisk, they trade up to get him. He shows a lot of promise this year. That you see the upside that he's going to be someone that's going to be a foundational player for this defense. But then Bo Limmer in the 6th round, he looks like a long-term starter potentially. Yep. Cameron Kinchins, Blake Corum didn't have the year that we expected, but you saw the flashes with him, and he looks like he's going to be a key contributor too.
I think the only thing with Corum is we just didn't see enough of him. What we did see was pretty good. We just didn't get to see a lot of it. I think that was a successful pick. We'll see what's coming up next, but at worst, it's an incomplete because we just didn't see enough of it. But what we did see was pretty darn good.
For sure. Tyler Davis, Jordan Whittington. He looks like he's going to step in there, especially if they move off of Cooper Kupp. And then you hit on undrafted free agents too. Omar Speights and Jalen McCullough are guys that played a big role in this defense. So, yeah, I mean, they absolutely just knocked out of the park again with the draft class. That's why I'm so excited to kind of get into it this offseason to see what they do again, if they can do it for the 3rd year in a row, finding these dudes. And that's the number one reason why they've been able to continue to be a contender. If they didn't have these drafts, they would be a bottom feeder team that was looking to build in other ways. They hit on the draft and they're still relevant. They're still winning football games. By the way, I just want to point out, I don't know if you see this trend that's going around where it's like they're comparing like NBA players' height to NFL players' heights. Okay. It's like going on the Instagram and people are getting their mind blown because they'll have a picture of like Trae Young and they'll be like, I can't process how Trae Young is the same height as Aaron Donald, right? How they're both 6'1", how Justin Jefferson is the same height as this guy, how like AJ Brown's the same height as Tyrese Maxey. I'm like, breaking news, NBA players are tall. Like, why are people freaked? I mean, like, come on now. Why is this? I don't get this whole phenomenon here. You'll probably see it today at some point.
This is what happens when you don't have football games on a weekend. The vacuum gets filled with nonsense.
That's a good point. That's where
we don't have a game this weekend, so we got to come up with some, you know what, and that's what we come up with. Like, hey, did you know that this guy's pretty tall? Yeah, I did.
Breaking like it's a basketball player. That's what they do, right? And also Aaron Donald is it's the strength too. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, he's built like the Hulk. Yeah. I think that has something to do with it. Yeah, it's not just that he's 6 feet tall; it's that he's 6 feet wide and 6 feet deep.
Yeah, like I think there's a better chance that Aaron Donald could be an elite NBA player than Trae Young could be an elite pass rusher, right?
Unless he can make field goals, like unless Trae Young can kick, he's not coming into the NFL. That's not happening.
That's true. That's facts. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA, and you can follow the People's Champ at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.